Domain 5.2, explain elements of the risk management process. So some objectives for this domain or lesson, we're going to go over risk identification, risk assessment, and then dive a little deeper into our risk analysis. Pretty much we're all about risk in this section. We're going to go over risk register, tolerance, explain some more of these risk management strategies. And then also we're going to define some of our business impact acronyms here and also go over risk reporting. Okay, risk identification. So this is the process of identifying potential risks that can negatively impact the organization's ability to conduct business. So this is just us going through and doing that asset inventory, looking at internal, external, intentional, and accidental risks, documenting identified risks so that we can share that with the stakeholders. So we have tools and techniques we can use like audits, threat assessments, vulnerability scans to create a comprehensive risk identification. So we have risk assessment ad hoc. So an ad hoc risk assessment is conducted as needed, often in response to specific events. So this is just, okay, hey, something happened, maybe an incident, there was something that triggered an event. Now we have to do risk assessment on the fly, okay? So triggered based, it gives you flexibility. It allows organizations to address immediate risk promptly. Recurring risk. So recurring risk assessments are scheduled at regular intervals to ensure continuous risk monitoring. So remember, with risk assessment, this is not us, this is not incident response. This is us saying, okay, are there risks within our organization? So we have to put together a plan of attack to provide consistency with this. Maybe we start to develop trend analyses that say, hey, every time we do a patch update to this third-party app, we introduce new risks, okay? Then we have continuous risk assessment. This involves ongoing monitoring and evaluation of risk factors to quickly identify and address risk as they arise. So you want to leverage some technologies that allow real-time monitoring. We want to be proactive, right? We want to enable proactive identification and mitigation of risk. And then we have different ways that we can actually display that risk. So getting into our risk analysis, our qualitative. So qualitative risk analysis assesses the impact and likelihood of risk occurrence based on subjective measures. So this is like saying, okay, we think that this is a green level of risk, which we can just say that means it's low, right? That's subjective though. We're just kind of creating that risk analysis, saying, okay, we believe that this vulnerability has a severity level of 5. And maybe we're not using something like CVSS, right? But that's a way we can have qualitative risk analysis. So this can help us in prioritizing risks based on their perceived severity and impact. This often involves scenario analysis in risk rating systems like CVSS. Now, quantitative. Quantitative is going to probably be better as far as meeting business objectives. With quantitative risk analysis, we're using numerical methods, typically financial, right? So with quantitative risk assessment, this is going to be us saying, hey, here's our annual loss expectancy. Here's how we know if we're going to get an ROI by introducing this new technology or service. We're going to be able to do cost to benefit analyses on different risk mitigation strategies. And this is going to be more objective, right? Instead of us just kind of saying we think the risk is low, we can actually go to stakeholders. We can go to management and our businesses and say, hey, this is going to cost us this much money if we don't patch this risk. Does this meet your risk appetite? So now let's go over some of those quantitative terms. So the single loss expectancy. So this is the monetary loss expected from a single occurrence of a risk event. The single loss expectancy is formulated by multiplying the asset value times the exposure factor. So this requires accurate evaluation of assets, and it gives us impact estimation. So the SLE, or single loss expectancy, provides a concrete estimate of the financial impact of a specific risk event. The ALE, something that's going to be pretty much what we show to our business, right, to our stakeholders. This is the annual loss expectancy. This is calculated by taking the single loss expectancy times how many times this risk is going to occur throughout the year. So this is our long-term risk assessment, right? So let's say if a risk occurs, right, it actually comes to fruition, and that cost us 50,000. Well, if this happens twice a year, what's our ALE? 100,000. Okay, so we're gonna bring that to the business and say, hey, if we don't patch this risk, if we don't mitigate this risk, it's gonna cost us 100,000. And here's how we came to this conclusion: by calculating the SLE and the ARO, which is calculated by the asset value and the exposure factor. All right, the annual rate of occurrence. So this is how many times we estimate that a specific risk is anticipated to occur within a 1-year period. So let's define some other terms: probability and likelihood. So probability and likelihood are measures used to estimate the chance of a risk event occurring. So quantitative analysis is often used to analyze and to estimate the risk levels. The exposure factor. The exposure factor represents the percentage of loss a realized risk would have on a specific asset. So this quantifies the impact of a risk on an asset as a percentage of its value. So this is an integral part of calculating single loss expectancy. All right, the impact. So impact refers to the consequences or effects of a risk event on an organization's objectives, assets, or operations. So the impact, kind of just in the term, right? How does this affect our business continuity? If this risk occurs, if it's realized, does it affect our reputation? Will it affect the trust with our customers, our B2B and B2C customers? Does this affect our trust with our stakeholders, our employees, right? How does this impact the organization? Will there be financial implications? So will there be direct loss? So will we actively lose money? Or is this going to have indirect financial loss, right? Where we're saying, damn, we got to hire lawyers now, bring in more legal teams. All right, let's do our check on learning. Okay, question 1. What is the difference between recurring and one-time risk identification processes in security governance? So that's going to be B. Recurring risk identification is a continuous process to identify risk regularly, while one-time identification occurs in response to a specific event or at a specific point in time. That's our ad hoc, right? Question 2. What is the purpose of calculating single loss expectancy in risk analysis, or SLE? So this is to find the financial impact if this risk happens at a single occurrence, right? So if this happens one time, this is how much it's going to cost us as an organization. Question 3. Why is annualized loss expectancy an important metric in risk management? This goal, we can estimate the annual cost, right? It's kind of what we want. Like if we're doing our quarterly reviews of the cybersecurity team and department, we got to go to the CFO and say, hey, these are the risks we have. Let's take this to the board and let's see if we can allocate some funds. Because if we don't, and if this happens, we estimate that we'll lose this much money yearly. In risk analysis, what does the exposure factor indicate? This is going to be based on the percentage, right? The percentage of asset value loss when a risk event occurs. Question 5. What does the annualized rate of occurrence represent in risk analysis? That's going to be B, right? The number of times. This is just how often is this risk going to be realized within a calendar year? Then question 6. What distinguishes qualitative from quantitative risk assessment in security governance? So let's look here. So B, right? Quantitative risk assessment provides an exact monetary value of risk, while qualitative risk assessment describes risk in terms of likelihood and impact that we kind of subjectively put out there.